Really, it is uncommon for a ship's crew to have completely vanished without any sign of struggle or peril, and for the ship to be able to continue on adrift in near perfect condition.
Imagine a ship found adrift on the vast ocean, its sails set. But the crew vanished without a trace, and the food was still warm on the table. What could have happened to those lost souls? It might sound like something from a cheap horror flick, but it happened, and the world has never stopped asking how. The Mary Celeste became the ultimate ghost ship when it was found drifting in 1872. The crew missing, meals still set out as if they would return any second. The wine was untouched, the cargo was safe, but the people were simply gone. This wasn't the only ghost ship found this way, but it became the one we could never forget. But what really happened to Mary Celeste? The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste was found in 1872, abandoned, yet in perfect condition with food and belongings intact. And yeah, that sounds like a plot device out of a budget horror movie, but this was real, and it left a mark so deep on maritime lore that we are still chasing the ghost it left behind. On December 4th, the British brig Dei Gratia spotted a ship drifting off the Azores, her sails partly set, moving strangely under the wide Atlantic sky. The captain of the Dei Gratia, David Morehouse, knew the ship. It was the Mary Celeste, a 282-ton American brigantine he had shared port with only days before in New York. So you can imagine how strange it felt to see her drifting like that, empty of life, yet still pushing forward with the wind. When the boarding party climbed onto the deck, they found the Mary Celeste seaworthy, her hull sound, and her cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol mostly intact. Her single lifeboat was missing, and so was every soul on board, but the ship was not in chaos. There was water in the bilge, but it was manageable. The sails were damaged but functional, and the cargo was untouched, except for a few barrels that had leaked. Now, here's where the "food still warm" line comes from. While it is true that meals were found in the galley and the captain's quarters still held personal items, including valuables, the food was not literally steaming. But the image of meals set out, clothes laid carefully on beds, and the cabin neat with personal effects in place was chilling enough to burn itself into people's minds. It became the image of the ghost ship. Life paused mid-breath, like someone stepped out for a moment but never returned. The last log entry was dated November the 25, 8 days before the discovery, and it noted nothing unusual, only that the Mary Celeste was near the Azores. The sea was rough, but it was nothing a ship like that couldn't handle. And then, nothing. Just silence on the waves until she was found adrift. So what happened? The theories pile up like driftwood on a beach. Some believed pirates boarded her, but the untouched valuables made that seem unlikely. Others said mutiny, but there was no sign of struggle. Natural phenomena were considered, like waterspouts that could have scared the crew into abandoning ship, but leaving a seaworthy vessel for a small lifeboat in the open Atlantic seems like a desperate and unlikely choice unless something truly terrifying forced them out. Then there was the alcohol theory. The cargo of industrial alcohol could have leaked fumes, sparking fear of an explosion if someone thought they smelled gas. The idea is that the captain, Benjamin Briggs, might have ordered an evacuation to wait it out at a safe distance, only for the lifeboat to break free, leaving the crew drifting away while the Mary Celeste continued her lonely journey. Some point to psychological strain, the isolation of the sea, and the fear of bad weather, making a bad call even worse. And while some even whispered about sea monsters or supernatural forces, the truth is no one really knows what drove the crew to leave a perfectly good ship in the middle of the Atlantic. That is why the Mary Celeste became the archetype of the ghost ship. It wasn't just that she was found empty, it was that she was found whole, alive in a way, still moving, sails catching the wind, food ready to be eaten, and personal belongings waiting for owners who would never return. It was a scene that turned an abandoned ship into a mirror reflecting our fears of the unknown, reminding us how small we are on the sea, how one bad choice or sudden terror can wipe people off the map without leaving a trace. It became a story that shaped public imagination. Newspapers at the time leaned hard into the supernatural, letting the ghost stories flourish because the mundane truth felt too thin in the face of such an eerie discovery. The Mary Celeste lived on in books, songs, movies, and countless campfire stories, becoming a symbol of how the ocean can swallow people whole without even a ripple to show where they went. Now, I'm curious what you think. If you were out there, in that lifeboat with Captain Briggs, what theory would you hold on to when the wind started to rise? Do you think it was the alcohol fumes, a sudden panic, a storm that made a bad decision irreversible, or something else entirely that stole them away? But the Mary Celeste is just one ghost ship. What about others with even stranger stories? Discovery and investigation. On December the 4th, 1872, the crew of the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste drifting near the Azores, sails set but no one aboard. The Mary Celeste did not look like a wreck. Her rigging was mostly intact, though some sails were damaged, and she was steering under partial sail like a horse without a rider, still moving but with no direction. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no broken railings, nothing that screamed violence. Her lifeboat, however, was gone, cutting into the mystery like a sharp whisper, suggesting the crew had left willingly or in panic. Below deck, they found the pump partially disassembled, as if someone had been trying to repair it or check for water. There was about 3.5 feet of water in the hold, which was not ideal, but the Mary Celeste was not sinking, not even close. Her cargo of industrial alcohol was mostly there, except for a few barrels that had leaked, creating a sharp, nose-prickling scent that hung in the air. Food stores were untouched. Barrels of water, casks of salted meat, supplies that could have lasted for months, and personal belongings lay where they had been left. Clothes neatly folded, valuables in place, children's toys still sitting quietly, waiting to be played with. The food was not literally warm when found. However, the image of meals still prepared and belongings left behind with care was enough to ignite imaginations, painting the Mary Celeste as the ghost ship frozen in time. Life paused with the sea waiting for an answer. The discovery of the Mary Celeste triggered an official salvage hearing in Gibraltar. It was as much a courtroom drama as an investigation into a maritime riddle. The crew of the Dei Gratia, who had to sail the Mary Celeste to port to claim salvage rights, found themselves questioned, as suspicion hovered over the idea that maybe they had something to do with the disappearance of Captain Briggs, his family, and the crew. After all, in those days, the law and the sea both demanded explanations when a prize like the Mary Celeste turned up empty and claimed by someone else. The Attorney General in Gibraltar, Frederick Solly Flood, was convinced there was foul play, leaning into the idea of murder for salvage. The hearing stretched on for nearly 3 months, digging into every possible detail of the ship's condition, the crew's actions, and the eerie state of the Mary Celeste herself. Yet, no evidence of violence was found. No proof that the crew of the Dei Gratia had done anything except find an empty ship in need of a crew to bring her in. Eventually, the salvage award was granted, although it was much less than expected, hinting at the lingering suspicion that something was not quite right about the entire affair. It was as if the Mary Celeste herself cast a shadow over everyone who touched her, her mystery seeping into the official record like water into dry wood. This is the moment when Mary Celeste's legend took shape. A clean ship, cargo untouched, food and water ready, but not a soul aboard, drifting silently in the Atlantic. A story like this was bound to take hold, becoming a campfire tale for sailors, a curiosity in newspapers that needed to sell stories, and a core piece of maritime folklore that would ripple through history. And now, Imagine you are the first person to step aboard that silent ship. The boards creaking under your boots, the smell of salt, alcohol, and old wood in your nose. The sails above catching the wind while you stand in a world abandoned without explanation. What would you think? Would you be afraid? Would you look for signs? A clue in a hastily scrawled note, a footprint, a splash of something dark that might tell you what happened here? Or would you feel like you had stepped into a story that was bigger than you, one that you could never quite understand, even as you sailed the Mary Celeste into port? While the discovery and investigation of the Mary Celeste raised more questions than answers, the bigger mystery is yet to come. What theories have tried to explain the disappearance of the Mary Celeste's crew, and which hold the most weight? Theories and speculations. Numerous theories have been proposed, but none conclusively explain the crew's disappearance. In December 1872, the Mary Celeste drifted in the Atlantic, sails loose, lifeboat missing, meals still warm in the galley, and not a soul on board. It was a moment frozen in time, like a paused documentary frame holding the world in its eerie grip. Everyone from sea captains to insurance men to coffee shop philosophers has tried to solve it. But here's the unsettling part. The truth still hasn't surfaced. One theory that clung to the public imagination for years.
With all things considered, let's review what I think is the most likely scenario.
Points to the 970 gallons of industrial alcohol stored below deck. Many claim that the leaking barrels below deck could have caused vapor to rise, and in fear that a single spark could turn the Mary Celeste into a floating fireball, the crew abandoned ship. Some believe Captain Briggs, cautious and protective, might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, planning to return once the danger cleared. But as we all know, the sea isn't a patient guardian. Because of the strong currents, the Mary Celeste would sail on, ghost-like, as the crew vanished into the endless blue on lifeboats. But when researchers examined the barrels later, they found that while 9 of them had leaked, there was no evidence of an explosion, no scorching on the timbers, no burned edges along the cargo hold. The barrels themselves were made of red oak, which is known to leak, so the mystery deepens. If Captain Briggs evacuated out of caution, he may have made a fatal miscalculation, but the evidence stops short of proving it. Others turned their eyes skyward. They claim waterspouts might have scared the crew away. You know, those twisting columns that dance between ocean and cloud? Could those have swept across the ship, drenching it, frightening the crew into abandoning ship in a panic? But the Mary Celeste was found dry, her cargo intact, the sails weathered but functional. Waterspouts could not have been the cause. If a waterspout did pass over, it left no signature, only questions. The idea of pirates is tempting, the stuff of adventure novels and grainy movie frames, but the facts fight back. Nothing of value was missing. The crew's possessions, the cargo, even small trinkets, remained untouched. It's hard to picture pirates boarding only to leave without spoils, especially in an era where stolen goods were the point, not ghost stories. Some have whispered about mutiny, suggesting that tensions among the crew reached a breaking point, leading to violence and abandonment. But the Mary Celeste showed no signs of a struggle. Captain Briggs was known as a fair and composed leader, the kind who read scripture with his wife and daughter, both of whom were on board. For a mutiny to occur under such conditions, with no evidence left behind, feels like reaching for a shadow that isn't there. And then, of course, there's the realm of the supernatural, the easy fallback when logic strains under the weight of the unknown. Other people online claim that sea monsters, alien abductions, or even curses from the deep found their place in late-night conversations and campfire retellings, but they offer no anchor in reality and no tangible clue to hold on to. They speak more to our hunger for mystery than to any credible explanation. Yet, what if the answer is painfully mundane, buried in human error and the cold mechanics of the sea? Consider the faulty chronometer theory. which suggests that navigational miscalculations might have led Captain Briggs to believe they were closer to land than they truly were, prompting an evacuation in rough seas. Or the possibility of a broken pump, making them fear the ship was taking on water even when it was not. A premature evacuation driven by faulty equipment, human caution colliding with maritime unpredictability, could explain why a perfectly seaworthy vessel was left to wander alone. Each theory circles the same unsettling truth: a perfectly functional ship, meals prepared and untouched, a lifeboat gone, and a crew that simply ceased to exist. No one returned to claim a story, write a letter, explain what moment drove them over the railing into the lifeboat, and never return. And maybe that's why the Mary Celeste endures, refusing to give us a clean answer. It's a reminder that the sea doesn't owe us explanations, that even in an age of satellite images and 24-hour coverage, there are places where human certainty ends and silence begins. So, what do you think? Did leaking alcohol barrels spook Captain Briggs into an ill-fated evacuation? Was it a rogue wave? A phantom storm that pulled the lifeboat away forever? Or do you believe there's a deeper story beneath the surface, one we've missed for over 150 years? But beyond the facts and theories, how has the Mary Celeste influenced culture and our collective imagination?
The legacy of the Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste's story has inspired countless works of fiction, films, and folklore, embedding itself in popular culture.
This is the legendary ghost ship of all time, the one they found floating off the Azores in 1872.
In the 1870s, the world was still adjusting to the mechanical heartbeat of steamships and the global whispers of the telegraph. Yet the Mary Celeste, drifting in silence with warm food abandoned and a lifeboat missing, cut through the noise in a way no technological marvel could. It became more than a ghost ship. It became a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest fear of the unknown. Arthur Conan Doyle was among the first to capture this fear, crafting a fictionalized account that spread faster than the Atlantic winds, turning the Mary Celeste into dinner table conversation from London to New York. He changed names, bent facts, and leaned into mystery, but the story gained a life of its own, shaping how people saw the sea, not as a pathway, but as a portal where reality slips. Films followed, each frame drenched in fog and mystery, recreating the moment sailors found the Mary Celeste adrift. Books filled shelves, retelling the ghost ship's story through pulp covers and serious maritime studies alike. Even today, when you scroll late at night, the Mary Celeste pops up in podcasts and comment threads, with each retelling bending to the voice of the storyteller, but always orbiting that single question: why did the crew vanish? There is something almost cruel in how the Mary Celeste refuses to give us a neat ending. It makes us confront the fragility of human certainty, the limits of control we cling to while navigating seas of our own, whether in business, relationships, or moments of solitude when the world feels too large to understand. In that sense, the Mary Celeste is more than a maritime riddle. It is a reminder that isolation can happen even in a crowded world, that disappearing can begin while meals are still warm, and that sometimes we don't get the answers we think we deserve. Its endurance. Have you come across the Mary Celeste in a show, a book, a late-night podcast, or even a game that caught you off guard and made you pause for a moment? And was it pirates, alcohol fumes, or something stranger waiting in the fog just beyond what the history books could explain? After over 150 years, this ghost ship still drifts through our stories and screens, reminding us how mysteries can echo across generations and shape how we see the unknown. Let me know what you think happened to the vanished crew in the comments, and why.